Last time, the use of the simulations to estimate the value of Netflix, we entered the data of picking up the company. It automatically shows us the ticker. We chose United States because it's the main country in which Netflix is operating, and we're doing the valuation for 2018. In addition, we chose the main industry it works, which is entertainment. Uh, Usually, it depends on the company you're working on. If the company is operating in several industries, as we said, you should add another industry by clicking here and choosing the second industry. I'm just making it up. Let's say it's apparel. And then you just put how much revenue the company is generating from each segment. It's automatically will do a weighted average of the beta and the weighted average of the growth rate. For now, we don't really need it. We know that they are mostly in the entertainment, and we're assuming most of the income is from entertainment. That gives us the cost of equity, cost of debt, together will give us the cost of work in the valuation screen. We get all the numbers are presented here based on the calculation in the folder calculations. I strongly recommend that you look at the data folder. Here you see all the data pulled out for you from the SEC, and make sure that there isn't any number missing. In this case, we see that already all the numbers are there. Okay, let's go now and look at the valuation. In the valuation, we arrived that we get the net present value exactly as we learned in class, and then we said that we're supposed to subtract the debt. We subtract the debt. We subtract minority interest if there is. Now we know what minority interest is. And then I said in class, and also you should do in this final video, we assume there is no excess cash. And if there is a preferred stock, it will show here automatically. We take when we take the present value minus debt, minus minority interest, minus preferred stock, we get to the net present value of equity. We divide it by number of shares. We get the intrinsic value per share. This number we should compare to the market price per share. I mentioned in the previous video that some people, in fact, including myself, trying to push all this. And when I see such a difference, that's already a big difference. That means intrinsic value is extremely lower than what it's being traded for. In this case, you will ask yourself, well, maybe whatever calculation we're doing, maybe they are not really reflecting the true potential of this company. And we made some assumptions about the growth rate in the short terms, maybe we'll increase it, and we'll see if we are close enough. For example, let's assume it will be 6% and not 4.6 based on the past experience of the company. Okay, let's assume that the WACC will be even lower than 4.2. Let's say 3 point, I don't know, let's do 3.78. And then we will say that the marginal tax rate, the effective tax rate was less than 5%. The marginal tax rates in the United States is 21%. So maybe we will push it down to be like 5% even in the future. How much that affect the final results? And then we'll see that it's getting there about 72%. What about even if we increase, let's say we're increasing the growth right in the long term? How much that will be affecting? Almost nothing, really. Okay. So now we're getting that results. We're still far away, and we're trying to explore. What about if we will assume that we're still wrong? Maybe it is still that the WACC it's even lower than that. At the same time, maybe the short-term growth is a little higher. in the simulation here, we assume that all those variables might have a kind of a normal distribution around the values that we just plugged in here. For example, let's say the short-term growth, it's not exactly really 6%, but it's about normal distribution. And the normal distribution, we assume it's around two values, 90% of the 6% or above the 6%. Let's see what will be the distributions of the final value. In other words, we're setting here the range to be that the value of every parameters on which this final distribution, this value of the company depends on, and we assume that the value of every variable, for example, short-term growth, will be from 10% below 6%, which will give us 0.6. So it means the value will be between 5.4 to 6.6. And that's the distribution, a normal distribution between 5.4 to 6.6. And the numbers I get is based on my assumptions that the range will be 10%. Some things will be about the 3.8. There will be plus minus, the range will be plus minus 10%. And the values between will be like a normal distribution between those two values, say for every number, effective tax, and all the rest, okay? So how will the value of the intrinsic value will look like? If we click now on this one, we get a distribution, it's not really 100,000 times, which is quite a lot. So it's randomly picking up all those values randomly, and for each value, you calculate the value of the final numbers of the company per share, the value of the company per share, and we'll see what the final distribution. We'll see already, it's mostly, the peak is around the $70, okay? But it could get even to 100, yeah, but I wouldn't count on that too much. It's definitely not going to pass the 150, which is the, we barely see here values above 150, really. So seeing 267 and knowing that even in the best scenario of the drawing of the random numbers, it's not passing 150, that means that this value is really quite substantially different. And other things that we have in the simulation, which is quite nice. Okay, this is if we're changing all the variables. What happened is how much or how will be the distributions of the value of the interesting value if we randomly change only the WACC. And if I click here on the WACC, it's again will run 100 times, but this time we'll see it does quite affecting only the WACC. If only on the WACC we check in the sensitivity, it will reach that cannot explain that the value will be above 100. Okay, it's almost unlikely to be above 100. You have the same things for almost all the, in fact, all the other variables. And we see that really that the short-term growth doesn't really affect much because it really will be about 72 to 74, which is quite close to the value we got here. Okay, so it's already substantially affecting. So we can say the WACC is much more effective, the solution is more sensitive to our assumptions about the WACC, less sensitive to the short-term growth. Some things about the long term, let's see, and the long terms that have a much more effect in our assumptions than the short-term assumptions on the value we will use in order to do the estimation. Here we have already the same things about the EBIT, how much is really the EBIT, and the EBIT also have effect. But if I have to rank them, I would say that the WACC and the long-term growth are the numbers on which the valuation is the most sensitive to. Okay, let's say about the marginal tax rate. It's less sensitive, it's almost not sensitive that much. because after all, don't forget, we kind of forced the effective tax rate and the marginal tax rate to be almost the same, 5%. So plus minus 10% don't really affect much the solution. It's already too low anyway. Same things about the effective tax rate. Okay, it's almost really don't affect at all. Both of those really don't affect almost anything because they are too quite low anyway. So I can even ignore. Bottom line is, they would say, okay, we're coming to a conclusion that the intrinsic value is 73, but it's possible that maybe it will be between, I would say, let's say, between 50 to 100, more or less, quite a big range. To be outside of that range, it's very unlikely. So, and the most crucial assumptions that we make or our estimations for the WACC and for the long-term growth and the EBIT are the most effective on affecting the most the valuations. What will I would do in this situation? I definitely would say something is going to happen in the long run. It's hardly likely to see the company continue with such a high value versus the intrinsic value for a long term, and something going to happen in the next few years. When that's going to happen, that's a different question, because we're dealing with an extremely big company, which being affected by a lot of other factors. But no question that something is going to happen, and that's should be the conclusion. Hope that this tutorial help you to analyze the data that you get from this valuation and conclude your paper. There's one more thing you will need to add to your paper. It's a relative valuation, and for that I will make a separate video. Good luck.